News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moskow.
Karen, we begin with the lead up to a crucial meeting now just one day away. President Donald Trump is set to appear face-to-face tomorrow with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Anchorage, Alaska. The president is warning of very severe consequences if Putin does not agree to a ceasefire with Ukraine. He says he hopes to set up a second meeting with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelenskiy after the summit.
No, it was always going to be I was going to meet with President Putin, and then after that I'm going to call the leaders and President Zelenskiy. I'm going to call President Zelenskiy, and then I'll call, probably in that order, the leaders. There's a very good chance that we're going to have a second meeting, which will be more productive than the first.
President Trump spoke from the Kennedy Center in comments heard live on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg's Rosalind Matheson says the president appears to be shifting his tone.
We had a lot of conversation between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, where Donald Trump seemed quite effusive about the relationship and certainly about his ability to create a ceasefire in Ukraine sooner than later. Then he seemed to get quite exasperated with Vladimir Putin to the point he was already threatening him with severe consequences, including potentially tightening the noose even further on exports of Russian oil, especially to countries in Europe. And then he swung back a bit towards optimism on these talks. And now again, he's talking about severe consequences.
Bloomberg's Roz Matheson reports the president assured European allies in a call yesterday he would not negotiate territories with Putin, but would instead push him to meet with Zelensky. This morning, the Kremlin says final preparations for the summit are underway. The Kremlin says the meeting will begin 11:30 a.m. Anchorage time. That's 3:30 p.m. on Wall Street. And it says Presidents Trump and Putin will hold a joint news conference following their conversation.
Well, Nathan, President Trump also says he will name a replacement for Fed Chair Jerome Powell a little bit early. He made the comments during the Kennedy Center news conference.
I'll be naming a new chairman sometime within the next, I think I'll name it a little bit early, the new chairman. I'm down to 3 or 4 names. All good, all great.
While the president says his list of candidates is relatively short, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent tells Bloomberg the administration plans to consider as many as 11 candidates. Bessent also says interest rates would be 1.5% to 1.75% lower by now if the Fed had gotten revised jobs data sooner.
If we'd seen those numbers in May, in June, I suspect we could have had rate cuts in June and July. So that tells me that there's a very good chance of a 50 basis point rate cut.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent spoke with Bloomberg. For the full conversation, head to the Bloomberg Podcast channel on YouTube.
Nathan, former St. Louis Fed president and current candidate to become the next Fed chair, Jim Bullard, tells Bloomberg that he expects the Fed to cut rates in September, but he does not expect a half-point cut.
50 sounds panicky, sounds like the administration wouldn't be that confident in their economic program, which I don't think is the right stance to take here.
Former St. Louis Fed President Jim Bullard says if he is chosen to succeed Jay Powell as Fed chairman, he would seek to break down, quote, groupthink inside the central bank. Well, over in Europe, Nathan, the UK economy did better than expected in the second quarter. GDP rose 0.3%, beating the 0.1% forecast by both private sector economists and the Bank of England. We get more from Bloomberg's Lizzie Burden in London.
It is a positive surprise in that it's not as bad as expected, but still growth slowed. So in the second quarter, you're coming down from 0.7% to 0.3%, which still underscores the stagflation.
And Bloomberg's Lizzie Burden says the latest figures mean the UK recorded the fastest growth of the group of 7 nations during the first half of the year. And that's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Karen Moskow.
I'm Nathan Hager, and this is Bloomberg.